Hello, audience. It's nice to have you back on the channel. This time I'm talking with an value investor and analyst from Spain. But before that, I always ask you to support my work by leaving a comment, subscribing, and thumbs up as well. So thank you for that. Now let's go to the interview. Hello.
Hi, Tillman.
How
Good
are you
to see
doing in this time?
Yeah, well, very concerning times, but everyone I know is safe, so good, very good.
You're the first time on the channel. Can you maybe start with saying your name, because I'm a bit bad in speaking Spanish, so it's better to pronounce it, and then telling us, our viewers, more about the background of you.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Javier, and after studying economics, I started working for an asset management company as an equity analyst, focusing on European companies. And I worked there for 5 years, and then I set up vadevalor with my business partner, Abhinav. And basically, so we realized that it was very complicated to find who the best investors were in each market. So we came up with a very simple concept. We started a rating system, rating fund managers with a very simple criteria. So those fund managers who have outperformed their benchmark for more than 10 years, they are AAA rated fund managers. If they've outperformed the benchmark for more than 5 years, AA, and for more than 3 years, A-rated fund manager. So something very simple. We started in Spain. That was very well received by the markets, and we're just doing the same all over Europe now. And yeah, so we're happy with all the progress.
So if you're interested in his work, take a look under the interview. There's some remarks where you'll find his page of vadevalor. You're also into research of equities as well, or stocks.
Yeah, so that's my background. That's what I specialized in. So I spent 5 years for an asset management company, and I spent all my time doing research, like researching companies from different sectors, different countries, and so on. I was very focused on European equities. So yeah, and then taking advantage of that knowledge, we also believe that's very, very useful to build vadevalor as well, and to offer all these services.
So, but maybe let's go bit back and take a look at the current situation of coronavirus before we dive into stocks. How's the situation with coronavirus in Spain?
Well, Spain has been hit hard by this crisis, and I was living in the UK, and I moved back here around 3 weeks ago. So as soon as I realized how bad the situation was, I came here to be closer to my family. And the situation is not very good. So my business partner, Abhinav, and I, we had different meetings in Madrid. We were supposed to study there for 2 weeks. And after 2 days, companies started canceling their meetings. Companies couldn't have any meetings, and they were not allowed to have in-person meetings. And as soon as we arrived there, we realized that everyone was talking about coronavirus. So like cases that was at the beginning of last month, and around 3 weeks ago. And yeah, so there was a lot of panic. And after 2 days, so companies started canceling the meetings. And I remember that as if it were yesterday. So I was in a coffee shop with my laptop working, and Abhinav sent me a message saying, "Oh, Javier, I've read in the news that Spain is considering closing its borders." And yeah, as soon as we read that, Abhinav flew back to England. I came to Spain, and you've read it in the news. So all shops are closed, like all non-essential businesses are closing. So the situation is not good, but especially everyone here, like we're very concerned, especially like about our family members, especially about old people. So it's a very concerning situation. And I strongly believe that there have been 3 main problems in the way that the Spanish government has handled this crisis. I don't think it's the right time to blame governments at this stage, but I think it's good to know what's being wrong. So what should have been improved in terms of the reaction for other countries to do it a bit better as well when they face this problem, or even for us to to react a bit better in the future. So the first problem, I think that the government has been very slow. So we had cases already at the end of last month or even before, and so at the beginning of this month, around 2 weeks ago, there were big events going on in Spain, so they were not cancelled. For instance, on the 8th of March, many hundreds of thousands of women, they joined protest on International Women's Day. That shouldn't have happened, and that was allowed. In my city, I live in Valencia, and we have a very big and nice festival called Las Fallas, with a lot of events taking place every day. That's very fun and very good. But as well, so there's like mass gatherings of people, millions of people coming to Valencia, and that was cancelled too late as well. So it started, and it shouldn't have started either. So that was a big problem. That knowing what was happening in Italy, because we were reading how the cases were growing exponentially, we should have stopped all these events. Then also we had, and we still have it, another big problem, which is the lack of testing. And that's a huge problem. So as soon as I was supposed to be in Madrid for 2 weeks, but I just stayed there for 2 days. And as soon as I came to Valencia, I just wanted to get a test done. I didn't think I had coronavirus, but you never know, right? And you want to get tested, because I was worried I could pass it on to my grandma or to my uncles or to anyone. And I tried to call the emergency number, and I couldn't get through to anyone. And that was just at the very, very beginning of the coronavirus, of the spread. So imagine now it's absolutely impossible. And if that was 3 weeks ago, now it's it's not possible. So, and that's a very, very big problem. So I think the government is reacting there, and little by little, they said that they want to improve in that area, but it was very slow. And so those are things. And also something very important as well that is happening not just in Spain, that's happening in every developed, or in most developed countries as well. It's obvious that we're not very well prepared for this scenario. So you see how healthcare workers, they're not very well protected. So they should have all the protective gear, everything, and there's lack of equipment, and that's totally unacceptable. So for next crisis and so on, all governments, we strongly believe that all governments should cooperate and make sure that all the equipment is there. And as soon as there's a crisis such as this one, at least we should have all the necessary equipment. So that has also a big problem. And then also you can imagine, as all the company stores are closed, the social impact is huge. All of us are very concerned. We cannot go out as everyone, right? So and that impacts everyone. But also it's not just that, but the economic impact is huge. So, and it's similar here to other countries. So recently, Mario Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank, he said that the burden. So he said that governments are going to increase their levels a lot, that the private sector couldn't bear all the burden of this case. And so it's very similar in Spain. They announced very strong measures that they're implementing, and those measures are working well. So I always try to ask, well, of course, my friends, how they're dealing with this crisis, what's their situation, and so on. And for most of them, this help received by the government, that's helping so much. Of course, it's not perfect, and you see how on many occasions the most vulnerable people, they are the ones suffering the most, those without family support, without savings, and that's very concerning. And all of us should help as much, or at least the big institutions, they should have a lot of support now. But at the same time, governments are doing, I think, these measures, even if they may have come a bit late, but all these measures are I have them here written. So for instance, and it's very similar in all countries. So they set up a guarantee scheme for struggling businesses. So just to offer liquidity to those companies struggling more for this crisis. That was like a huge measure. Also, they eased the conditions for temporary layoffs. They implemented a measure called like ERTES in Spain, allowing companies to, allowing like workers to stop working for a short time. And then, so that's also been very, very positive. Then also self-employed workers, they get a special benefit of around 70% of their annual pay. Like they measure how much they've been receiving for the last 180 days, and they get that payment. So yeah, that's also very, just trying to minimize the impact as much as possible. And these measures are working, like delaying mortgage payments for people who lose their jobs, just trying to minimize as much as possible this impact of the situation.
So things are getting,
the impact is huge.
On the health side, things are getting better now. So the growth of the cases is slowing, and
yeah, we had some positive news recently. We were very, very concerned because when you looked at the number of deaths, you saw how the chart like was growing exponentially. And at the beginning, we don't know like where that's going to end, right? So this weekend, we saw that the number of new deaths it stopped growing. Like even you could see how the curve is flattening. So that's extremely positive. And so little by little, hopefully we keep on seeing that trend going on. So we knew, in China, all these strict lockdowns, like the measures, they worked, and in other countries. So they are also working here, and that's good as well for other countries to see that it works. Everyone's very concerned. So absolutely everyone, like or most people, they're at home. If you go out, you get fined. So you can only go out to buy food, to buy medicines, and just like for very, for your needs. But all those strong measures are working, which is a good thing.
In Germany, it's a bit different. You can go out, but you're not allowed to meet more than one person besides family. So you can move around still, but you have to be low on contacts.
I also think that's because it started here. So here, the number of cases, like they started growing like a lot faster and quicker before. So I think that's why the measures were stronger here. So maybe in some weeks you see these strong measures in other countries. At the beginning, I thought that the Spanish government was going to be the worst one at handling this crisis, and then I saw how other governments in other European countries, they were also like very slow. And I don't like seeing that because I know how bad the situation is. I remember I was like on social media talking to some friends, and you see their posts, and I was at home and I was seeing how they were like dancing, playing sports, like hanging out with people, and so little by little the same. Yeah, so many governments could have reacted a lot earlier, indeed.
Yeah,
hopefully,
to a certain extent, yes. But maybe let's move on to the impact on the stock market. I want to start with the question: where do you see areas of the Spanish stock market that has been hit without a real reason? So where you see value?
Yeah, it's always interesting. So always, whenever there's panic in the markets, you see a lot of inefficiencies, as you are asking, right? Like and some companies which are strongly hit and shouldn't have been hit. And even I think it's very useful to see the investments of the best investors in each country. So for instance, here in Spain, I think it's good to see where they're investing, to see where there can be value, right? Because they are the ones who know the Spanish companies like the best. So for instance, to give you some examples, there's one of the most famous investor in Spain, Francisco García Paramés. He's the owner of Cobas. So they have an Iberian fund, a fund focused on Iberian equities. And the main holding is Técnicas Reunidas. So that they have around 10% of their portfolio invested in Técnicas Reunidas. And that company went down. That's an engineering company focus on the oil and gas sector. And the company went down in around 4 years, like from 40 euros to 12 euros. And it's a family-owned company, and yeah, it looks like the price is very low. Then, for instance, other
what do they do?
asset
Do you have more details on what the company is doing?
Yeah, so they do like huge projects. They are an engineering company, so the big plants, the big plants for oil, gas, especially so like they have a lot of operations in the Middle East, and they've been in the sector. Yeah, they're one of the leading companies, so they have a very good track record of execution, and they've done it very well for many years. And over the last 2-3 years, their margins have been hit.
Mm-hmm.
They had, so as demand went down, basically there were some interesting things there. So, and for instance, like I believe that the management team reacted well because they decided not to, when they had some specific projects with some problems with some projects,
mm-hmm.
which hit margins, but also they decided in other areas, they decided not to fire employees or engineers because demand was going down. They thought this is something temporary. So over the medium term, we just prefer not to lay off people and continue working with everyone, even if margins are hit. And then as we see a recovery, over the long term, we think that's a better measure. But as people see the margins going down,
mm-hmm.
they'll be like strongly hit. And that's a cyclical company. And now it's like trading at the like lower than ever. Now, also, so for instance, vadevalor, another very
mm-hmm.
good asset management company, one of the top holdings is Elecnor. That's also a family-owned company. Like they're focused on, they have two businesses, infrastructure and concessions. That's also a very well-run company. It went down by around 30 or 40% with this crisis. There's an interesting case. So another good asset management company called Oros Asset Management. They worked at Metagestion for many years. Another asset management company, they set up their own company. And I was reading their last letter with investors, and they speak about Mehr hotels. That's, I think, is the top holding or one of the top holdings. And this hotel, with this crisis, you can imagine coronavirus or a hotel there. And so the shares went down by 70% in a month. And they were explaining how the value of the hotel assets. So if the share price is 3 euros, the value of the hotel assets is 15 euros. So yeah, the market is very worried because they have a bit of debt. Well, they had debt. But if you see like the value, they could use those assets. They could sell some of those assets to get financing. And that's like yesterday, I was saying that the share price went up by 25% in a day. So that's when you see these strange things, and that's where the active management adds value. There are many different examples. There are very good global Spanish companies. But the best companies, they haven't been hit that much. So for instance, there's a very, very good company called Viscofan. It barely, the share price like barely went down. Vidrala is another very good company, but like, well, of course, that it also makes sense because Viscofan, for instance, they do the casings for sausages. And people, like even with of course, like with this crisis, that's a sector which hasn't been affected that much. So the share price wasn't hit that hard. But there are areas of the market where you see a lot of value, especially with family-owned businesses, and there are many opportunities as well for good investors.
You've seen more opportunities besides the three you already mentioned?
Yeah, of course. There are many. I'm just saying some examples of the companies that I read. There are 100 and something listed companies in Spain, and most of them have like the share price of most of them have gone down by 30 or 40%. There are many different cases. Yeah, for instance, there are I'm not like, I don't, banks are very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't see many banks offering good returns for the very long term. They are very, very cyclical. And it's a kind of cyclical, they're cyclical, but like you, little by little, you make a bit more, and suddenly you lose everything. That's not the kind of business you normally, and they're like, huge leverage and so on, right? But there are still some banks which have been able to lend very well for a very long term. And there's a case of a bank which lent very well over the long term in Spain, which is called Bank Inter. You see, like even after the crisis, they lent a lot better than all the others.
Mm-hmm.
That's been hit hard as well by this crisis. It could be another. I mean, like there are different. If you ask me about one company we could speak, most companies fell by more than 30%. So there are many opportunities in all markets. It's very interesting how. So you know that the average, for instance, price to earning ratio over the long term of the stock market is around 14, 15 times. So in a month, of course, many companies are being hit by this crisis, and they will make less money next year, maybe like even in 2 years. But over the medium and long term, I think that, of course, like strong companies and well-run companies, they will continue increasing their profits, and that's not just by so they continue acquiring companies, they continue investing internally, so there's many companies which will be more profitable. So those companies which were trading at a price to earnings multiple of 18 and they're trading at a 9 price to earnings multiple, so they're you're paying a lot less for each euro in profits, right? So there are a lot of opportunities in the market. And I also think that in being Spanish, I think we can have a very good, a better understanding of how not always, so, but in general, we can have a better feeling of which companies are stronger here. Because I'll give you a very simple example. A supermarket called Dia. I don't know if you heard of that. There are different chains of supermarkets. The strongest one in Spain is Mercadona. And around some years ago, 3-4 years ago, I read, I saw that a Russian investor bought a majority stake in Dia. And I was very surprised. I was thinking, wow, I have, like, where I lived, there's a Dia, there's near my house, there's a Dia, there's a Mercadona, there's a Consum. I know where my family members shop. I know where my friends shop, right? And when I went to the stores, I saw that I compare one to the other, and I think, no, especially knowing that at the time that he bought the business, it was selling at a price to earnings ratio of 20. And you go into the store selling like at a very high multiple, and you think, this doesn't make any sense. And I wasn't surprised at all when the share price like collapsed. And I'm sure many Spanish people were not surprised either. But that's something that you can only see if you are in the country and you know the habits of everyone and so on. That's very interesting. But that's a very simple example, but that happens with so many things. And so we think that's why it's important as well many times. We also know, as I talk to fund managers a lot, so of different countries. But for instance, when I started in Spain, many of these fund managers, they also have funds focused on Iberian equities. So I know which companies they are interested in, or which companies they feel they have like very strong management teams. And the same for a German person in the sector. So they know which banks are stronger in that country. They know they have very good, a better understanding. Foreign investors can have a very good understanding, but you always have an edge, I think, because of where you are from.
Surely. So what is your thinking you have about Spain in the next 3 years? What might be the long-term impact of the coronavirus, or better 5 years than 3 years?
Yeah, I Of course, you'll see higher public debt levels, that's for sure, in all European countries. But in general, I'm not negative about Europe as other people are. I'm positive. Yes, we're going to be hit for sure, but I don't think you'll see extreme scenarios like a default or something like that at all. That's something that a friend was asking. You think Spain will default? And I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that is very good for Spain to be part of the European Union, and like that's brought a lot of benefits for the country. So you see the interest rates, Spain's paying for the debts are very, very low because of the intervention of central banks. Also, if you see the evolution of the peseta, so the currency that we had before, the peseta depreciated in value by 90%, so lost 90% of its value in 20 years from 1970 to 1990. So, and now that we're part of the European Union and we're part of a very stable monetary system, that's not happening anymore. And we can see the benefits of being part of a very strong and solid monetary system. Also, being part of that forces governments to be a lot more careful and not to spend as much as they would have spent probably by themselves. So we see a lot more benefits, and we think that, well, at least I think that being part of this European Union, we think that is beneficial for most countries as well. So, and I think all countries should cooperate to make sure that that this works for the long term. And I also think like after being traveling for a very long time, well, for many months, I've been to many different countries, and you see how in general things work quite well in most countries. So in general, I'm positive about Europe. Yeah, there of course there are specific problems that we must face. You know that in Spain specifically, pensions are very high and so on. So there are strong and very important problems that we must face and will face, and that will be like very big. But they will find a way, and they will do. I think that at some point they will do absolutely anything, whatever it takes, to save as well. So on the country level, you asked, sorry?
On the company levels. Like
company.
If you look at listed stocks and their business that's underlying them.
Yeah, as I said before, so there are many businesses which are global. And so even if at some point there's a very big political crisis in Spain, which can happen, those businesses, if they sell in like globally, if they sell everywhere, that will not impact them as much. And as I said, so Spain has some very, very good and global businesses as well. So, and now with this current situation, so those companies with higher levels of debts, especially like in sectors which have been more impacted by this crisis, so they will suffer a lot more. I think that, well, we'll see. So like measures are there so that we don't see big bankruptcies and so on. We'll see how events unfold. We hope we see like we don't see many disruptions, and little by little things get back to normal. But we as an investor, you always need to think about the worst case scenario, right? And you must invest trying to protect your purchasing power over the long term, at least protect it. We try to increase it over the long term. In a very, very extreme and negative scenarios, you know that now the levels of public debt, they are really high, pretty much higher than ever. So you saw that at the end of the Second World War, 1940s, 1946, I think that's when the United States, the debt level was like the highest. And now it's also reached like a very high level. So if there's like a very, very negative scenario, like public debt increases so much, in that case, you could even see a bit well, you could see more inflation to reduce the debt burden of countries, but that would only be, so central banks, I think they're going to do, they don't want to see high levels of inflation. And so if, yeah.
For the end of our interview, can you tell us maybe more about Spanish companies that are internationally oriented and listed in the Spanish stock market?
Yes, there are some very, very good global businesses. To give you some examples, for instance, everyone knows Zara stores. So there's a listed company called Inditex, which owns all these stores and many others. That's one of the strongest businesses in Spain. Then now that, yeah, about Inditex. So for instance, now with coronavirus, the crisis, the founder of Inditex, he's made like big donations. So I talked before about the problem that there's a huge lack of equipment. So he's donated a lot of money to buy masks, to like not just buying like with their facilities. So they are using their facilities as well to help the society now under this crisis, which I think is very good. Also, Grifols, that's another very, very strong business. There are very different good companies, and now pretty much all businesses are cheaper than before. So I think it's a good time to check and to learn a bit more about Spanish equities. Yeah.
Then thank you very much for our interview and stay healthy.
Tillman, thank you so much as well for the interview and also for all the work you are doing. I think is brilliant. All the content you are uploading, really, really high quality, and hopefully we can continue collaborating like more and more as time goes by, and it's great to collaborate with you. So thank you so much, and stay safe as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.